Previously on Funny Science Fiction.
Kid is weird. He sits in his room and talks to himself. Why doesn't he play ball?
Hello, and welcome to the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
The podcast that you wish was a little more timey-wimey and a little less wibbly-wobbly. So our special guest host today, is Kathleen Wass. Kathleen is the wife of John and mother to a spawn that will ultimately give her a complete mental breakdown. But hey, at least the kid is super cute, though.
You know, the cuteness is what saves her. But Ferb, I know what we're going to do today. We're going to talk with Dan Povenmire.
That's right. That's right. Dan Povenmire, the co-creator of Phineas and Ferb and the beholder of that Dr. Doofenshmirtz lovely singing voice, the singing voice of a generation used by possibly dozens for mood music. I mean, come on. It could happen. It could be a thing.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, Dan.
I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping for. Is
who needs Luther Vandross when you got
Dr.
my
Doofenshmirtz? Twilight years singing old jazz standards in a Ramada Inn somewhere in Scottsdale, Arizona. So,
you know, I will admit that I am super geeked to get to co-host today. I am a huge Phineas and Ferb fan. I have seen every episode at least twice. I actually had a beta named after Perry. Because he would frequently
a beta fish, the little blue guys.
Yeah. He would frequently disappear in our tank, and then it was where's Perry? But you know, I wanted to talk about Dr. Doofenshmirtz just a little bit because through the seasons he gets some pretty interesting tragic backstories.
Yes,
you have a favorite one?
Oh, there's a lot of the balloony one is great. I love the original one because that's the one that because that wasn't even something Swampy and I came up with. That was Chris Hedrick and John Barry were a storyboard team, and they pitched us. You know, they were doing this episode where he was just destroying all the lawn gnomes in the tri-state area, and they said, "Why?" And I said, "I don't know. Make something up if you need a reason. Do you need a reason?" And they were like, "Well, maybe." And then they pitched us that whole, you know, our Zatzenfruit garden for witches and wood trolls. And they pitched that to us. And Swampy and I were like literally crying, laughing, because it was just so perfectly like dark and dystopian and wonderful. And so that stayed in. And then the next one they pitched that didn't have a backstory in it, we were like, we're like, where's the backstory? And they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was a thing. It's like, well, it is now. Yes. You're going to have to do that from now on in. And, you know, that's the great thing about doing a show when you bring in other people, because Swampy and I did the pilot, just the two of us. And then you bring other people to play in your sandbox. And so much of the things that have become staples of that show, like, you know, Doofenshmirtz trying to take over the tri-state area, and the you know giant floating baby head, and the zebra that calls Candace Kevin. These are all things that come from other people's brains, and then you like it so much that that the other writers like, ooh, I want to use that. I want to use that. I want to use that. It's really fun. But that's where that came from originally. So I have a fondness for the original. And I have a fondness for there's one that just kept going like tangenting off, and was again it was one that John Barry wrote where, you know, he went off like, okay, that the reason is unimportant. I had been disowned by my parents and I was being raised by ocelots. But anyway, like it just where it just like kept on. Okay, long backstory short, and he just keeps coming back to the thing and then going off on a tangent. I loved that one a lot, and I especially love when he invents the invisibility ray, because he tells this whole story of the Fireside Girls, and it's not even a backstory. It happened like the week before, where the Fireside Girls come over and are trying to sell him cupcakes, and he's like, and they come to your door, and you've left the window blind open, so they can see you. They can see you. You can't even pretend that you're not there. So I'm just going to shoot them with a invisibility ray so that I don't have to look at them. So nice. Those are probably my big three.
Nice.
Awesome. So I have a question for Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Yes.
Perry always seems to foil your plans with a push of a button. And the public wants to know, why do you put a self-destruct buttons on your Inators?
I think it's only prudent. I mean, I would rather have a self-destruct button and not need it than need one and not have it, right?
Fair enough.
Oh,
Solid logic.
You can't make an Inator without a self-destruct button. How would it even function? Everything's wired through the self-destruct button.
all right.
And you have a pretty impressive list of things that you've worked on over the years. Of course, there's The Simpsons, Family Guy, SpongeBob, and of course, all of our favorite, Phineas and Ferb. Now, one of the things I love about your work is the way that you've worked music and songs into each of the shows, such as Campfire Song,
Yes.
which my kids sang non-freaking stop.
I apologize.
So thanks for that. But ultimately, my favorite is the Aglet song from Phineas and Ferb.
Yes.
I walked around singing that for quite a while, nonstop.
Yes, I'll be honest. I had very little to do with the Aglet song. That was
Okay.
Piero and John wrote that. The only thing I did, which they didn't even like, was I had them say when they sing A-G-L-E-T, I had the audience then say, Aglet, don't forget it. And they were like, no, I like it better, because they had the spelling going on longer or something. I don't even remember how they originally had it. I think it was just A-G-L-E-T, don't forget it. And I was like, no, it should be A-G-L-E-T, Aglet, don't forget it. And because I feel like if you spell something to a crowd of people and they don't then say what that word is, that's just objectively wrong. I think that just doesn't happen. You don't spell something to a group of people and they don't say the word back. Plus, I wanted kids to remember what an aglet was. So, you got to say it a bunch of times in a song.
I've never forgotten.
I have to admit, I told a lot of people what an aglet was because of that.
Yes.
Right?
But
Exactly.
still-
I walked around saying, do you know what an aglet is? I do. I watch Phineas and Ferb. Thank you very much.
Oh, especially when people are like, why would you watch Phineas and Ferb? It's like, I learned a thing.
Yeah.
I learned what an aglet was.
There's a thing on TikTok right now where there's that trend of tell me this without telling me this, and the trend is tell me you're a Phineas and Ferb fan without telling me you're a Phineas and Ferb fan. And my favorite reply to that was a girl who just like stitched herself in, and she's just looking at her shoe and says, oh man, my aglet is coming off. And that was it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
I was like, yeah, that tells it. That tells it.
That's brilliant right there.
Yeah.
So on the topic of music with Phineas and Ferb, so
Yes.
the title sequence is performed by Bowling for Soup, which is
Yes.
not a band I would normally associate with a kids program.
Yeah.
How did they get chosen to be the band for that? Were there other bands in consideration?
Well, I was a big fan of Bowling for Soup for a while before that. And I mean, there were a bunch of names that got thrown out, and I just said, "Ooh, can we?" And somebody said "Bowling for Soup" because they have that sort of crunchy pop thing that sort of works with that song. And I was like, "Oh yeah, can we get them?" And they were like really excited about it. I think they were big fans of The Simpsons and Family Guy, which I'd worked on. And Jarrett just came out and hung out with us for a day, and then they went back and gave us that, which was really cool. We had written the song, but we had written it in a very different kind of motif. It was sort of like old timey for the original pilot, and then Danny, our composer, had done this crunchy pop version of it, and we were like, that sort of sounds like Bowling for Soup. We should see if they'll do it. And then Jarrett wrote a longer version that we put on the album. He added like a second verse and a bridge and a different chorus. It's called "Today Is Going to Be a Great Day," I think is what it's called. And but when they play at live places, because it's part of their set now, because it's the thing that everybody sings along to. It's really cool when I go see Bowling for Soup and they're up there and they sing that, and everybody in the entire auditorium sings along. It's really, really cool. It's like a rock star moment. I like it.
Their Great Burrito Extortion Case was the first CD I ever bought for myself.
Oh yeah. No, he's a really great pop songwriter, and they're just a fun band to see live.
Nice.
If you haven't seen them live, go see them. Well, I mean,
Not yet.
nobody's live right now, so
I would
Whenever
like to
that
see.
glorious day comes about.
yes, exactly.
I would like to see like a line dance at like a wedding to the song, "Bow Chicken Bow Wow." That's what my baby says.
That's a fun one.
Yeah.
That was that's one of those just perfect little pop melodies that just popped into my head while I was playing the guitar. Is that one, and we were just trying to come up with something that was like, what would be like, like the stupidest possible pop song we could write that just you just know nobody could get it out of their heads, and it was literally like the first thing that came out as I was strumming, and it's stood this test of time very well, I think.
So I know that you probably get Phineas and Ferb questions all the time as we're here talking about Phineas and
Yes.
Ferb. Do you have other projects that you want people to know about? Other projects that are like less known?
Well, our follow-up to Phineas and Ferb was a show called Milo Murphys Law. We did with Weird Al Yankovic was the lead role, and it's a perfect companion piece to Phineas and Ferb. It's because Phineas and Ferb is all about super positivity from these kids while they're making everything, but for them nothing ever really goes wrong. Everything goes wrong for Candace, but nothing goes wrong for them. And Milo's sort of the almost the same show, but almost the opposite show at the same time, because it's all about everything going wrong for Milo and him staying super, super positive. And I think it's every bit as good a show as Phineas and Ferb. When I watch those episodes, I'm just as proud of them. But nobody ever really saw it because it was at this weird time in Disney TV animation history where, they had just finally had a #1 hit show in animation with Phineas and Ferb, and they decided, okay, this is great. Let's not do any more animation on the channel. Let's do it all on Disney XD and try to prop that channel up, which was always sort of their redheaded stepchild channel anyway, that wasn't getting any of the promotional money that the other one was. It was on most, even on different cable systems, you'd have like all the kids channels were all grouped together. It was like Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, Disney, Disney Junior were all like 432, 433, 434, 30, like so that kids could just scroll up and down. Mm-hmm. And XD, I guess, had been bought later or started later. So it would be, they'd be right there. And then like 1704 would be Disney XD. So if you didn't know exactly where it was, you were never going to find it. Right. And so it was just sort of problematic that they had just put all their shows on that and occasionally would run them on Disney Channel instead of like Phineas and Ferb was playing all the time on Disney Channel. During the heyday of Phineas, if you turned on Disney Channel and just left it on for 2 hours, you would see that show.
Right.
Absolutely,
and it was just very hard for them to find Milo, so it never became the hit that it has a very small but very rabid fan base who just this year Renew MML, Milo Murphys Law, was trending on Twitter all of a sudden, for some reason, and I was like, well, that's sort of cool. But we did 2 seasons and we were out. So that's the thing I wish people would discover, especially if you liked Phineas and Ferb. No matter what age you are, I think you would really enjoy Milo Murphys Law. I think it's so much fun, and I just wish it had gotten more respect.
So Disney's greenlit your new project, Hamster and Gretel.
They have. That's why I was late to this podcast, is because we were in a writers' meeting for Hamster and Gretel, which is so far so much fun. We're having such a good time. We're way ahead of schedule on the scripts because all the writers just came in. I think partially because of COVID sort of shutting down everything. Everybody was like so raring to go that we all just jumped in but it's like, oh my gosh, I can do something other than rewatch Game of Thrones or whatever the heck you're doing at home these days. And so we're having a really great time. It's about it's really about an older brother and a little sister The little sister has a pet hamster, and they get visited by aliens who tell them, the two of you are going to be, have been chosen to become heroes. We will bestow upon you powers unimaginable. And then they shoot them with this big ray, and the older brother, who's like all excited about this because, you know, like, this is destiny. This is what I'm going to do. The powers unfortunately go onto Gretel and her pet hamster. And he doesn't get any. And so, you know, as you can imagine, that causes a little bit of friction. So you see, he sort of becomes the guy in the chair on the headset, you know, giving them directions. And you know, he's sort of the brains of the operation. But you know, he always feels like he was passed over. There's this big mistake that he was supposed to get superpowers. It's a lot of fun. We're having a great time with it.
Do you guys have a premiere date for that?
We do not, but you know, we're just now writing it. It'll be probably at least a year. So we're probably talking 2022 at this point, just because of how long everything. We haven't even got an art staff together yet. So
okay.
So it takes a while. You know, a single episode of a series, of an animated series at Disney Channel at least, takes 10 months to produce. So it's sort of like having a baby every week, you know, with no epidural. And it's like literally like, oh, if we got pregnant right now, we would have our kid when the first Hamster and Gretel, you know, like, is finished and ready to go on the air. So it's a long, laborious process. And people say, well, how do you get so many of them done? Well, it's like, well, we're not doing one episode at a time. We're doing 20 different episodes at a time. So my job is often to go from thing to thing, from episode to episode to episode. I'm looking at one in premise, one in script, one in animatic, one in pitched board, one in color, one with sound effects, one with music, and one being mixed. Wow. Every week I'm checking in on those constantly. And so it's a crazy, ridiculous thing to do for a living, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, sounds like it.
You probably don't know the answer to this one yet, but will there be a Phineas and Ferb and Hamster and Gretel crossover?
Oh, I would think there would be. I think that's a pretty safe bet. I mean, we have no plans for one yet. It wasn't like Milo had a Phineas and Ferb crossover that we were planning from like the very first episode. The whole first season of Milo builds to a big reveal at the end of the first season that really cements that they're really in the same world. And I think these guys are all in the same universe. You know, it's all this weird place in my mind that all connects.
Nice. All right. So Dan, I read a while back that one of your biggest influences in animation was Chuck Jones. And many have called him the father of modern animation.
Yeah.
And now, for those who are listening, if you don't recognize who Chuck Jones is, it means you probably didn't watch a whole lot of Looney Tunes growing up. But I did, and I love Chuck Jones stuff. So my question for you, Dan, is what was it about Chuck Jones that drew you in? What about his work inspired you? Well,
there was so many just great idea gags that were all about the character of this certain person or someone, and he would sometimes let gags take a long time to land. And you know, like one of my favorite Chuck Jones gags was Bugs Bunny convincing this guy that he like selling a piece of real estate to some guy who was trying to do something else, and then cutting to him like later building this house, and he's like halfway through building this house, and he's hammering on the stuff like that, and he just looks up, and it's like this gag that takes like 30 seconds to play out, and it's just him like looking around going, wait a minute, and it's just this music where he realizes that he's been had, but it's like 6 months later he's built half a house at this point, and So what I love about Chuck Jones is he has this ability to get a huge laugh out of a pause and just like a half-lidded, slow burn that somebody gives somebody, or just no reaction whatsoever. So anyway, so that was something we tried to do a lot in Phineas was get laughs out of a pause rather than just saying something funny or doing something funny, like just getting the reaction of somebody having the least amount of reaction. And first season, I often had to go back into boards, like a big boulder would fall down next to Phineas and Ferb, and the guys would go like this, and it would like, no, that's not as funny as if they just go bam, and it lands and misses them by this much, and they don't react at all. That's a funnier reaction. Is nothing, Absolutely. And it's less drawings, so we would always go that way.
There you go. Now, another thing that I had read about you and the beginnings of Phineas and Ferb, that it took you 16 years to get a network convinced that this should be a show that people would want to watch.
Yeah.
So I wonder, it was
like 13 before we convinced somebody to make it. 13 or 14 before we convinced them, and it was like 2 more years to get on the air. But yes, it was a long time.
Okay. So the show that we got to watch on TV, was it the same basic concept, or were there some modifications along the way?
There are very minor modifications. It didn't always take place in just summer. That was something that came out of the development thing. Isabella was a new thing. Baljeet was a new thing. These were that came out of doing the pilot and sort of just starting to write it. But if you look at the original pitch packet, you'll absolutely recognize the show. It feels very much like the same show.
Okay.
And the characters all look the same. It's it's basically exactly the show we pitched, but things evolve as you're actually writing them, and characters change and stuff like that.
So as the imagination behind the show, and I was just thinking about some of the adventures I would have as a kid. What were some of the things that you would do during your summer vacation?
we were just I grew up in Mobile, Alabama. We were in like a little suburb way on the outskirts of town, and in like 3 directions from the back of our house, it was woods for as far as you could go as a kid. I mean, it would have been like 20 miles in any direction before you saw anything. That this way was the rest of town, and everything else was just woods and stuff like that. And we had so many crazy things that we did. I was telling somebody today about a time that me and 2 of my friends crawled for 6 miles underneath Mobile in the drainage tunnels, because we found these drainage tunnels that were like 5 feet wide. And I was almost as tall as I am now. So we did the whole, we took sticks for rats and snakes and the flashlights with just like 1 battery in them each. And like, we're doing like this through these tunnels. And then we came up and we were like, wait, and we found like a drainage thing. We could come up and look at it, and it was like, wait, that's Overlook Church. That's like 3 miles from my house. and we were able to lift the manhole cover off and like climb out, and we were behind Overlook Church in this place, like behind a bunch of houses. It wasn't even on the street. It was like a drainage thing that was like between the backyards of a bunch of houses, and there's the church that a buddy of mine's dad was the preacher at, and we were like, we are way too far from home. We need to go back. So we got back into the tunnels and went back through the tunnels. We didn't walk home, like which would have been much easier and safer. And Mobile had constantly flooded, it's like the way the weather changed constantly there, and you'd have these flash floods. My parents were not happy to find out that we had done that. But we did a lot of, that's part of what Phineas and Ferb was sort of based on, was like me and Swampy both had childhoods that where we had a lot of creativity. We didn't have cable TV even yet to watch. So there wasn't a lot on TV for us except for specific times of the day. So we would just go out and make up stuff, go out with friends and play army or play cowboys and Indians or bad guys and cops or whatever. And there was also in Alabama, there were these red clay pits that just occur naturally there, that where erosion will do. Suddenly you come across these little Grand Canyons that are about 20 feet down, and then there's just places to go and do hide and seek and stuff like that. And we would always attach rubber hoses or something to a tree and rappel down into these places. It was a really fun place to grow up and just go and have adventures and things like that. So it's that was sort of the impetus for Phineas and Ferb, was like, let's talk about what 9-year-old boys would get into if they were not hampered by schedule and the reality of physics and stuff like that. So that's what it was all sort of based on our summers growing up.
Nice.
Really cool. So researching your almost 3 decades of work in animation and voice acting, you've worked with some really big names. You've already mentioned Weird Al. You worked with Seth MacFarlane, Tommy Chong. Who of all of these celebrities you've worked with, who is your favorite and why? And do you have any funny stories you can share about these celebrities?
Ooh, Weird Al was really, really just great to work with. Just one of my favorite people. He's super, super nice. He's super chill, which is like when people meet him, they're like, he was much more normal than I was expecting Weird Al to be. Super good guy. Dietrich Bader is a very good friend of mine. We bonded over so much because we have very similar backgrounds. Both of us have two sisters who are both PhDs, and we do something stupid for a living where we get paid more than they do. And he's just one of the nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. Got to write with Slash. We got to write a song with Slash from Guns N' Roses, which was fun to find out that he's a cartoon fan. And he's a big fan of Phineas and Ferb, and we got to,
so cool.
And then the funny thing is Slash, when Guns N' Roses got back together, or at least Slash and Axl patched up their stuff and got back together. We were in the middle of recording him for Milo Murphys Law. He came in and did himself as Slash for Milo Murphys Law, and so we heard a lot of that backstory of how that happened. And then he sent me an email and said, "Hey, do you want to go to Coachella? Our first big gig is going to be headlining Coachella. If you want to go to Coachella, I can send you comps." And this is how I know I'm an old man, right? My first thought was literally, I don't know if I want to drive all the way out to Coachella. It was like that was my first thought, was not, holy crap, Slash is inviting us to Coachella. And I told my wife, I was like, honey, Slash said he can send us tickets to Coachella and we can go see them play. Do you want to go to Coachella? And she's like, honey, if Slash is inviting us as his personal guests to go see Guns N' Roses, I don't think that's even a judgment call. I think we have to make that happen.
Right?
Really? It's like, okay, we'll do this. So we just went out, and it was the best possible way to go to Coachella, as I think I was like 50 or something like that. And, as two older people going to Coachella, we got there as the sun was going down behind the mountains, so it wasn't super hot. We got to park in VIP parking and go in through the backstage of all of these bands. We got to go, and we saw Ice Cube and what's the girl's name? She did that song "Closer" with the Chainsmokers.
I know I should know it, but
it's on the tip of my brain. But I'm a big fan of hers, which is why it's silly that I can't remember it. But I got to see her. I got Halsey. Is that right? Yeah. Halsey. Yeah. And we got to see like a couple of EDM bands and stuff. We got to get really good sushi over in the Rose Garden area. There were these pop-up sushi places. And then we got to go to the VIP section, which is down front and roped off, so you're not smashed all together. and see Slash play with Guns N' Roses, which I'd seen him play before. I've played guitar next to Slash. I try not to say I played guitar with Slash because it makes me sound like a much better guitarist than I am. But I've been in the room playing at the same time on the same song.
Slash adjacent.
Yes, exactly. But I'd never seen him play in a venue where he was like the big thing, like Guns N' Roses. They had these huge screens, and there's Slash's face up there on the screen, and he's rocking out. And I'm like looking up there, and I look behind me, and there's a sea of people going off into the distance where, past the horizon almost, of people headbanging to Slash. And I looked up and I was like, Slash is at work right now. A pretty surreal job, but Slash has a more surreal job than me. This is work. And I told him that later, and he said, no, man. That's the perks of my job, is that I get to do that. Everything else is my job. Everything else is the work. I'm not at work there. That's what I get to do because of the work that I do everywhere else. Cool. But there have been some really great people that if I started listing all of the people, including Cloris Leachman, who just passed away. Sure. I just did a TikTok telling a story about Cloris Leachman when on the last time we recorded her for Phineas, I was walking her out to her car, and there's like a patio restaurant that's between the two studios. And we're walking past this patio, and a bunch of people are at lunch, and she's talking to me, and she just veers off, and she goes and she picks up somebody's tray of food that they haven't even finished yet. And she's still having this conversation. She just picks it up and walks off with it and goes over to the trash and throws it away and puts the thing up there and never stops this conversation with me. And I'm looking back at them. They're all laughing because they were like, oh, my God, Cloris Leachman just threw my food away. And, they weren't upset about it at all. They were, it made their day. And I know that's why she did it, because she knew that it would make their day.
And nobody will ever believe them.
That's right. And I'm sure they're telling that story this week now too, because, it's like, so it was very sad for me when she passed. She played Doofenshmirtz's mom, and she was my mom in the show, which was cool.
Excellent.
And the fact that I lived a long enough life to have gotten to work with her, having like my first TV show, like adult TV show that I watched was Mary Tyler Moore, and to follow her that whole time, and then actually get to work with her. She was magnificent.
Yeah, she was a great comedic actress for sure. So the other two people here already know this, but I am a massive Star Wars fan.
Yes.
More of a Star Wars nerd and a Marvel Comics fan, to be honest.
Yeah.
Now, those crossover episodes, thank you, Kathleen.
You're
those
welcome.
crossover episodes that you did with Phineas and Ferb and Star Wars and Marvel were kind of the cherries on top of all the other Phineas and Ferbs that I have watched either with or without my children over the years.
Yeah.
So you've kind of talked about this a little bit on TikTok already, but I was hoping that you could kind of share the story in more than a 60-second spree here. How did you convince the folks at Lucas and Marvel, although part of the Disney family tree, to allow you guys to use those iconic characters for the greater good of humanity?
Well, it was a much easier sell than I was expecting it to be. I literally drew a picture of Doofenshmirtz as Darth Vader and sent it, like we're in a mix, and our post-production supervisor goes, Disney just bought Lucasfilm. It was like it had just come over the wire. And so literally within a minute of that happening, I had drawn this picture, taken a picture of it, and sent it to the head of the studio saying, I smell crossover. And he wrote back and said, no, I'm thinking the same thing right now. And I'm here at lunch with Gary, who's the head of the channel. And we both brought that up. And apparently that Friday, they went into a meeting with Bob Iger. And at the end of the meeting, he took his phone out with that picture on it, and he just slid it across the thing and said, Dan Povenmire sent me this. And Bob went, yeah, we got to get on that right away. And that was like, that's the easiest anything has ever been sold. But there's a couple of really funny stories about that. We were writing the show, and we were not in a place where I could pitch the whole thing, and they called me in to come in to a meet and greet with some of the Lucasfilm executives, and the head of the studio was there, Eric was there, and they said, Eric wants you to come down and meet the Lucasfilm guys. And it's like, I'm not ready to pitch this show at all. We have a lot of big story holes that are not connecting. It's, we're just, we're in an early stage. And she said, oh no, he knows. He just wants you to meet them. And apparently he didn't know that, because I went into the meeting and I sat down and was like, hey, how's it going? And he said, so can you just pitch us the story? And I was like, okay. And I just started into it. And because I was telling the story out loud, I somehow sort of forced myself into fixing those story problems. And I was able to tell them the whole story. And then I was like, okay, thanks very much. And I went outside and I got a piece of paper and I wrote down what I had said, because I was like, oh, don't let me forget this. Don't let me forget this. Because I'd come up with these really elegant solutions to the problems we'd been working on for 2 weeks. And I went back into the writer's room, okay, like this. And they were like, when did you come up with all of this? And I was like, while I was pitching it. But my favorite story of that time was it still needed an agreement between Lucasfilm and Disney, and they had pitched the idea that we would do this, and Lucasfilm seemed really excited about it. A lot of the Lucas people were fans of Phineas and Ferb and stuff, and we pitched them a show that they liked the idea of because their characters stayed exactly the same. We did a parallel story within the Star Wars. The first Star Wars movie, where they're at the next moisture farm over from Luke Skywalker, and their whole thing is they would rather stay on Tatooine instead of he wants to go off and get off of Tatooine, and they end up on this parallel story that keeps bumping into the original story. So we see bits of the original story, and we see, oh, I guess while they were up here, they were down there. It's a very complicated thing. They were all excited about it, but they had not given us the official go ahead yet. And that got pushed off a couple weeks. And they kept saying, no, we're definitely sure it's going to happen. And we're like, well, we have these 5 specials. The only one that's ready to go into production is Star Wars. And they said, tell you what, you can go ahead and start into production of it. If it all falls apart, we'll regroup and stuff. But here's the thing. The one thing that might queer this deal, the one thing that might stop this from happening is if it gets released at all that you guys are already working on it when we haven't officially okayed you to work on it. So I want you to tell your staff not to tell anybody about this. And so I called a meeting and I said, okay, the first rule of the Star Wars special is we do not talk about the Star Wars special. The second rule of the Star Wars special is we do not talk about the Star Wars. I don't want you to talk about to your hairdresser. I don't want you to tell your uncle or your aunt. I don't want you to tell anybody that we're doing this until we get the okay from this. And even then, let's keep it quiet. We want this to be a secret. And everybody's like, yeah, absolutely. Okay, yeah, absolutely, sure. We go home, or I go home, and I'm checking Twitter before we're going out to a dinner party. And somebody has added me and said, at Dan Povenmire, please tell me this is really happening. And I click on it, and there's a picture of some of our pre-production artwork.
Oh no!
There's Darth, like Ferb is Darth Maul leaping up and gonna attack Phineas, who's dressed more or less like Luke Skywalker, and it's this piece that Kyle Menke, one of our board artists, did, and it's obviously taken from one of our bulletin boards, because I can see the bulletin board on the outside of it and the pin stuck in it.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, who am I going to have to fire now? Like who is not paying attention to this? And so I click on it, and, on Twitter, you can sort of backtrack to see who's like this.
Right, yeah.
And suddenly it looks like somebody has bootlegged my ad, because it's coming from my account on Twitter. It's like, and I was like, has somebody taken over my account? Because it really looks, it's got the blue check mark, and wait a minute. I just click through, and suddenly I went, uh-oh. And I look on my phone, because I had taken 3 pictures of that artwork and sent it to my wife through text to show her what we were working on the week before. on my outgoing messages, there were only 2 of them.
Oh no!
So the third one, I had hit tweet on instead.
Oh no!
And tweeted it myself. And I was like, oh no! And my wife was like, honey, we gotta go. We're late. And I'm like, you're gonna have to hold on 1 second, honey. I'm in the middle of something. And she said, I was like, okay, like, and I'm thinking, what can I do? What can I do? If I take it down right now, everybody's going to know it was not supposed to be up. And people have definitely taken a screenshot of this, right? Mm-hmm. And it's going to become this whole thing. If I take it down when somebody asks me about it, they're going to be like, oh my God, they're really doing this. And it's going to be talked about and stuff like that. Twitter is immediate, but it also falls off pretty quick. You know, it's right. It's like the later stuff doesn't get back. You know, you don't go back and look at tweets from 4 weeks ago or something like that. So what? And the guy had just asked. I had tweeted it with nothing else. It was just that picture, and the guy had just asked, "Tell me if this is really. Tell me this is really happening." So I just went, "No, that's just for fun," and I tweeted that as a response to his thing. And then I did the hardest thing, which was to just leave it alone and leave it up and go to lunch or go to dinner. And then, which was like, okay, I think I have to do this. So I just left it there. And then I came back the 24 hours. I waited 24 hours and then I deleted it, and nobody noticed that it was deleted because it had fallen off the feed. Awesome. And I was just like, it was so that was the scariest part of doing the Star Wars special, but that's still one of my favorite episodes.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can imagine the thought of, who am I going to fire? Oh, honey, I got to fire myself. So,
yes, exactly. Like, who is the jerk who did this? I'm the jerk. It's me. I'm the jerk.
Who is Disney going to come after?
Yes, exactly.
All right, so Dan, we're all out of questions for you, but we do have a game we want to play with you.
Okay, let's play it.
All right, so here's what we do. At the end of our interviews, we like to play kind of a quiz game with our guests. Okay. Now, this does come with some fabulous prizes, however. It's a 5-question quiz, okay? So if you get 3 of them right, we'd like to send you one of these super cool I Gave to the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund mugs.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, now if you get 4 or more right, so 4 or 5, we're going to send you the mug and, of course, this book right here. This is Custodians of the Cosmos, which is written by our group founder, Drayton Allen.
Excellent.
And it's written loosely based on Star Trek and the Red Shirts.
Okay.
And it's designed to talk about those who boldly go to clean up after those who boldly just went.
Okay, very good.
So, and we'll make sure that Drayton puts some graffiti in the front of it for you.
Excellent.
Before it comes out. So here's our game. We have 5, like I said, we have 5 questions. You get 3, you get the mug. You get 4 or more, you get the mug and the book. If you get less than 3, however, there has to be a punishment. Of course. And the punishment is we take your face, we make a meme out of you.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, you agree to those terms. Very good. Sure. All right, let's get ready to rumble. All right, with a Phineas and Ferb style game. Now, what this is we've got these 5 questions. We sent them out to our Facebook group. Our Facebook group has 104,000 members right now. Okay. And we put out the question to them, and each of these are multiple choice. We want you to pick the one that was the top response answer.
It's like Family Feud.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we're going to ask you the question. Kathleen and Nick are going to ask you questions. They'll give you the 3 responses. You have to pick the one that was the number 1 response.
Okay, let's see.
So Phineas and Ferb have found their way into the Star Wars and Marvel universes. Which should they invade next? Doctor Who, Star Trek, or Firefly?
And it's your audience.
Yes.
I want to say Doctor Who because those fans are much more rabid. Although Star Trek is the bigger of those things. I think it's Star Trek.
You are correct.
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
So Candace has crash landed in the Alien movies. How does she bust her brothers before Mom comes home? Candace thinks Ripley is her mom, and the cat and the boys catch a face hugger together. She doesn't bust her brothers. Instead, they all join Ripley to fight the xenomorphs. Or she enlists the help of Ripley to keep things from going awry.
I think it's B. She doesn't bust her brothers, and they save the day.
That was not the top
No,
answer in our
what was
group. The top answer in the group was that they enlist the help of Ripley.
That would have been my second.
So Perry the Platypus has crossed over into the Stargate universe. Who is his nemesis? The Ori. He helps Colonel O'Neill MacGyver a way out of an evil death trap set by the Goa'uld Amon Doofenshmirtz. Or it's always Doofenshmirtz using Stargate tech for new innators.
I think it's C. I think it's always Doofenshmirtz. Is that right?
No.
It was B.
Yeah.
It was B. Yeah.
It was B. Okay.
The one with the clearly too much detail.
Yes.
Because you ask nerds questions and they give you
Yes.
too much detail.
Yes.
So Dr. Doofenshmirtz just created a new innator for the Star Trek Red Shirts. What innator did he create? The Red Shirt Dieinator, the Mission Successinator, or the Kabashi Maruinator?
I want to say Kabashi Maruinator.
That was not their top
No.
answer either.
Then
They
it's
said
B.
No, they said the Red Shirt Dieinator.
Dieinator. Okay, very good. It seems like they already knew how to do that. So
They are very good at
that.
dying, yes.
Okay. And there's one more question?
One
There's
more.
one more.
Okay.
So Phineas and Ferb are now part of Firefly. What are Phineas and Ferb going to do today? Invent outrageous masks so Candace can't bust them. Figure out what it means to be a leaf on the wind. Play with plastic dinosaurs. Curse you, cruel but inevitable plot point.
I figure out how to be a leaf on the wind? No.
That's what I
it's-
thought it would have been.
It's
too,
the third
but-
one.
No, it's the one about masks. We have a weird group. I
Okay.
probably should have told you that to lead off with.
So, I was a big Firefly fan back in the day, but I don't remember what the masks are a reference to.
That's what I was like. I was like, what? Oh,
I don't
Yeah,
remember the
I
masks
was lost on
either.
that one as well. But
Yeah.
all right, so
Okay,
Dan, we're
fine.
gonna take your picture and we're
All
gonna
right,
make
go.
a meme out of you. Hold on, I got to get my camera up here on the phone. Zoom in on you. See how long you can hold a face for. There
Oh,
we
that's a
go.
good one.
There we go. All right. So we'll
There you
take that. We'll make a funny meme.
Excellent.
Funny yet tastefully done meme, of course,
Excellent.
about Mr. Dan Povenmire. So excellent.
Do you have a website of your own or where people can go
I
to
don't.
find more?
You know, I tell people follow me on TikTok. That's basically all I do other than work anymore is do TikTok. That's been the thing that's kept me sane during COVID.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, oh, I don't have, you know, I have some free time. I'll make a little movie and put it out there. That's really
Have
fun.
you done any of the TikTok viral dances? Because I will need to download TikTok just to
I
watch
have
those.
not. Well, I mean, I did one dance that somebody was doing for 45 days to this Christmas song that I wrote a long time ago. That's you know he said I'm going to do it until Christmas or until Dan Povenmire duets and does it, and so I did that dance. But you know, mostly I'm. You know, I've done some music videos doing silly rap songs and stuff. I've done a lot of collaborations with other things. I have a green screen here, so I do little skits with my daughters and stuff like that. It's just a lot of fun, and you know, I get to edit video every day, which I really enjoy doing. So it's sort of like being in film school again, but I'm making little 1-minute movies. So
All right, we'll be sure to put a link to your TikTok in the
Sure.
description below. And
Excellent. Fantastic.
Excellent. So yeah, so I want to remind everybody that subscribing is the single most important thing that you can do to ensure that we get more amazing guests like Dan and funny moments for you to listen to. So make sure to subscribe. It helps more than you'll ever know. And also be sure to check out Dan's work on shows like Phineas and Ferb, as well as the upcoming Hamster and Gretel, even though we got a little bit of a wait for that, clearly. But check him out on TikTok. I follow him on TikTok. It's a good time. Dan has some great content out there. Now, however, if you're not happy with the content of our video today, all you have to do is make a submission, in triplicate, of course, to our complaint department, which will then be forwarded to Dr. Doofenshmirtz, who will use his chicken replace-inator to replace the offending party with a chicken that was, of course, Beverly Hills adjacent.
Well, thanks again, Dan,
Sure.
for being on the show.
Absolutely. This was a lot of fun, guys.
Yeah, we
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you, Dan.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody, for watching.
Thank
That'll
you.
conclude us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Our show is brought to you by our charity sponsor, the Red Shirts Widows and Orphans Fund, which also supports the Wish Upon a Teen Foundation that helps out sick kids when they need it most. And just imagine the comfort you'll give the red shirt crewman number 17. He'll know that when he puts on that red shirt and gets murdered on Nimbus 3 when they attacked by Cybot's Galactic Army of Light 12 minutes into episode 29, that he didn't leave his family destitute and without hope, because the Red Shirt Widows and Orphans Fund has his back and is one unscorched boot.
On behalf of the rest of the hosts of Funny Science Fiction, we'd like to thank you for listening to this episode. If you'd like to be a guest on one of our future episodes, please contact us by means of our Facebook group, Funny Science Fiction. You can find us on Twitter or Instagram using the handle @FunnySci-Fi, or you can go to DraytonAllen.com and click the Contact Me link at the bottom of the page. Thanks again. Hope you enjoyed the episode.